welcome to Fresh Quilting. I'm Catherine of Running Doe Quilts, and I'm here today to show you how to do strip piecing. Strip piecing to me is just sort of a magic technique. When you start quilting and you see all these quilts with all the crazy blocks and squares in them, and you think, oh my goodness, you have to cut all those pieces and line them all up and keep up with it, and that just sounds really complicated. But there's a secret, there's a magic secret, and it's called strip piecing. So to accomplish strip piecing, what you're gonna need is some fabric, a matte ruler rotary cutter. I like something at least 24 inches long because you're going to be cutting your fabric with the fabric. Some quilting thread, a sewing machine, and an ironing station, and then you'll be all good to go. So to start, we're going to cut our strips. So get you out a piece of fabric. If you get this off and you realize that this edge over here is kind of wonky, it came off the bolt funny, or it's been folded up in your closet too long or whatever, you can give it a good press because this edge, it's a good idea to have it as straight as possible. So to start with, I'm going to line this up on my mat. Now there's a debate between whether the ruler lines or the mat lines are the best to use. I kind of like to use both and see how they agree with each other, because if they both agree, I know I'm good. So I use a line on my mat to line this fold up to know that I'm straight, and then I use the ruler line to start cutting. So step one is to cut your first strip. Now I could, to square up this edge, start right here and cut off this edge and get it all nice and even. But if I do that, things are gonna kind of push around and I'm not gonna end up with a really straight edge. So for the first strip, the first rule is to come in a little bit further than I need to. I like to use the lines on my ruler to make sure I'm straight there, as straight as possible. If you're not straight here, your piece is gonna end up with kind of a V to it. So start here. You're gonna cut, 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 cut. Get you a good sharp blade. And pull this piece off, turn it around. Use the mat to make sure it's nice and straight and not wavy. And then square off that edge like this. So for this pattern, the strips are 2.5 inches, but your pattern may call for any number of different sizes because there are so many different things you can do with this technique. Ooh, square off that edge. See, I pushed it because I wasn't part of it there, so there we go. Pull off that strip, toss it away, and then keep cutting as many pieces as your pattern calls for. It's just gonna depend on your pattern. So cut, 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 keep going. Now you'll notice, and this is why I like to use the mat to line up, if I'm just using my ruler and I'm not perfectly straight all the way across, you might start to come in at sort of an angle, and then you're gonna get sort of a V. So let me just show you one of those V's. I'll do it on a little strip. If that happens, if I end up getting a little bit, walking the ruler a little bit more and a little bit more as I go on, and I end up with this V, this strip is still salvageable as long as it's straight along here. All I have to do is, pattern allowing, cut it apart on the fold and into two pieces that are still not as angled as this, they're straight across. And then I'll do the same thing I did at the start. I'll come in further than I need to, make sure I'm re-squared up, cut it, turn it, square it back up, and keep going. Now sometimes there's other reasons that I would cut it on the fold. Sometimes sewing, this is called width of fabric. It's from selvage to selvage. It's gonna be somewhere between 40 and 45 inches long. Sometimes people have a hard time focusing across that distance. So sometimes, especially when people are starting, I recommend, if the pattern allows for it, to go ahead and cut your pieces into 22-inch strips, just so you don't have to focus as far on your sewing. So you've got your strips, you're gonna head to your sewing machine and you're gonna start sewing. So open them up, full width of fabric, and get one of the blue and one of the colors. I'm gonna start, I like to get the selvages lined up. Let's see, put the presser foot down, and you're gonna sew with your regular scant quarter inch seam all the way across. So just keep sewing. And you're using a nice cotton quilting thread in the bobbin and the top, so that cotton fabric, cotton thread. Just keep sewing. Let's speed that up. We'll be here all day. The point of this technique is to go fast. You'll see. You can occasionally, if you don't have a quality machine, or your feed dogs will pull your bottom fabric faster than your top, and you'll end up with a little bit of a wave. One trick to that is to go is to sew one row this direction and then to sew back the other direction on the next row to sort of to even it back in, or you can use a walking foot, which is really the best option. So I like to do 2 strips and then head over to my cutting station, or my pressing station. So come over here, open it up, and press. For this one, I know that my seams will press, or will nest if I press to the dark, so that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna press to the blue on all of these. So open and press, open and press. When I've got these all good to go, I can head back over to the sewing machine and sew the next combo together. So open and press, all the way across. And I'm gonna keep doing this until this pattern calls for 5 strips sewn together to make the total combo. So I'm gonna keep doing this until I have all 5 strips sewn together. So it's the same process. There we go. And then take it back over to the sewing machine. We'll stitch it. And eventually, after enough iterations of that, we'll have this last combo that's ready to cut. So see all 5 strips, not a square in sight yet. So this is where the magic comes in. You're gonna take this over to your cutting mat. We're gonna remove all that. You're gonna lay it out on your cutting mat and you're gonna start cutting. For this, I'm making squares, and so my strips are 2.5, so I know that my subcuts are gonna be 2.5 also. So I like to use the ruler lines to make sure I'm straight, or the mat lines to make sure I'm straight, but I also like to use the ruler lines in here to make sure that things are matching up, to make sure it's even as possible. If your seam isn't completely straight, there may be some wobbling, but it's pretty forgiving. So I do the same thing I did before, where I go in more than I need to. Cut the first piece, turn it around, get back into even, cut off the junk, and keep going all the way down till we have all the pieces we need. So, got pieces. And you'll see this is where I tend to have the most problem with the ruler or the fabric shifting, and I have to re-square the same way I did on the strips at the beginning, and make sure that I'm cutting as straight as possible, because things will walk on me, or my seam allowance wasn't as straight as I had hoped it was. So you do that, and you end up with all of these pieces from all the different combos, and then you can flip them around, take them where they need to go. See, I think I need more of that piece. But you'll make all the pieces, the pattern will tell you, and eventually you'll get all these, the next step, sewn together with your 1/4" inch seam, and next thing you know, ta-da, you'll have this block, and all you really had to do was sew those strips together, subcut. It was a whole lot easier to keep track of. There weren't a zillion tiny pieces, and then this goes into there. The other blocks are made with different color strips. There's sort of a gradient rainbow going on in there. That is a traditional Irish chain quilt that I brought into modern and fun with this bold blue background. But you don't always have to do squares with strip piecing. There's the magic of long strips left open in these big rectangles. You can see this was one strip set that got cut apart to make pencil erasers. So not just traditional squares, but all kinds of new things. There's also this version where it's kind of hard to see it, but there's rectangles in here because I cut different width strips and combine them to create a whole new look. So I hope you'll give it a try and have fun.